Let's talk about the Succession series finale. I have a lot of feelings. Hey everyone, it's David Chen. I talk about movies, TV, the media, and technology. So, Succession just wrapped up a pretty successful 4-season run. There's been a lot of different opinions about whether or not they stuck the landing. I personally think they did. I'm actually more positive on season 4 overall than I am on the finale itself. And the reason is because season 4 takes place basically over the course of 2 weeks. So every episode represents about 1 to 2 days of time. And it's basically one of the most consequential weeks in the lives of the characters, and you as the audience have a front row seat to it. It's rare that a show will attempt something like that, and I really think season 4 of Succession is going to go down as one of the greatest seasons of television of all time. I also think that each of the characters got a fate that they deserved to an extent. Pretty much all the characters are bad people, and they all deserve to have their wealth and titles stripped from them because they've done terrible things. But emotionally, people finally got real this episode, harsh truths were said, some self-awareness was had, and at the end of the day, none of the Roy children are in charge of the Empire. And that feels like a fitting legacy for Logan Roy. Now, before I talk about some of the specific things that happened in the finale, I think it is important to talk about some of the things that did not happen in the finale. We never found out what really ultimately happened with the election of Jared Mencken. The show has in the past reflected on how the lives of the 1% and their emotional challenges impact the rest of the 99%. It did not use the finale to emphasize that message. This was all about the Roys and their personal issues. I was also a little bit bummed we didn't get more closure this season with Marcia and with Carrie. Marcia in particular was a major force in season 1, but it felt like the show kind of lost interest in her as time went on. Episode 9 was the send-off for those characters. And finally, we never really find out what happens with Matsson and the deal. Does the deal close successfully, and how does he run the company? You'll just have to imagine whether a mercurial billionaire who impulsively takes over a media company is gonna have a good time or not in the Succession universe. A lot of controversy around the finale has revolved around Shiv's big decision. Kendall seemingly has Matsson dead to rights, and in a critical moment, Shiv, previously agreeing to vote in favor of Kendall, decides to vote against. Why does she do that? The reason she gives is that she doesn't think Kendall would be good at the job. A few reasons that I can speculate on. The biggest theory I've seen discussed that I'm kind of aligned with is she made the decision that was right for her and her family. That is to say, her new family with her husband Tom and the baby on the way. Ousting Kendall and putting Tom in charge leaves Shiv closer to the locus of power, and if she still believes in Waystar Royco, the company, it's going to be best for her to be involved somehow. But it's also possible that she just had a change of heart and thought about it and realized the truth, which is that Kendall wouldn't be very good at this. We've seen him striving to take over in the past, but he basically has no good ideas whatsoever. And of course, when Kendall lies about having made up the story about the dead waiter, that's when Shiv and Roman know that he's not qualified. That plus him physically fighting them in full view of the board. But yes, I agree, it's a little bit vague, and the show could have done a better job explaining it, but it's up to the viewer to decide for themselves why it is Shiv makes that decision, and I do think the show gives you enough material to fill in the blanks. Let's talk about how each individual character ends up. I actually think one of the most interesting endings in the show is Tom being in charge. Tom has consistently been underestimated by the Roy children, but also he's awful. And what I mean by that is every single time we've seen Tom in a corporate environment, he is not good at his job. He is bad at giving inspiring speeches. He's bad at delegating and making decisions. He is thoroughly uninspiring, an empty suit, as Shiv Roy refers to him. So I think it's super fitting that this guy who has no skills, who's probably actively bad for society, who is only where he is because of nepotism, ends up at the top of the organization. It's a really sharp critique of how these decisions get made in corporations these days. And of course, I love that Tom is still a fan of Greg, even despite the fact that Greg betrayed him. The Tom-Greg love story is the best one in all of Succession. Of course, Shiv and Tom end up in the car together at the end of the show, and Tom extends his hand in one of the most awkward hand-holdings of all time, but Shiv's fate is that she's doomed to be a CEO's wife. She has overplayed her hand multiple times, she's lost the game, she basically ends up like one of the people she hates the most, her mom. The wife of an unloving CEO who's carrying a child that she's not going to pay much attention to. Super, super dark. Roman gets a martini, which is Jerry's favorite drink, and smiles as he looks at it. As with all the Roy children, Roman's going to be fine. He's going to make billions out of this Gojo deal, but he's probably going to leave this whole corporate world stuff behind. And he'll spend his time trying to undo the trauma of his father and reminiscing about better days. But of course, the very final shot of the show is of Kendall. Succession has really been Kendall's show. It's really been about Kendall's journey. He is completely shell-shocked by the events of the last few days, and he wanders through the park by himself with Colin in tow, looking out at the water. But unlike earlier in the season, he's looking out at the water, he's not in it anymore. Between the shot of him from behind in that park bench and Colin in the background, Kendall has finally become his father. Only a much less successful version. Anyway, that's what I thought. I liked it. Let me know what you thought of the ending of the show in the comments, and be sure to give me a like, follow, subscribe, etc. if you enjoyed this video.